You are listening to the Savage FINcast, Episode 8, Reality Bites.
Chicago. A criminal mastermind called Overlord held our city in his terrifying grip. Ordinary cops were losing the battle against Overlord's super freaks and mutants. Then, a miracle happened. When I found him, he had no memory of his past. I helped him find an identity and a life. Now we have a fighting chance. Now we have the dragon.
This is the Savage FINcast, Episode 8. Back again, new episode. We're here. I'm Jim Purcell.
And I'm Craig Olson.
We're here again for another Savage FINcast. We got a bit lined up. We're going to be talking about the newest issue of Supreme 66. And later on, we're going to talk about Savage Dragon 90 as part of our back issue bin discussion, as we tend to do.
Right. Yeah, and I think you were saying, was 90 your first issue of Savage Dragon?
Issue 90 is a special distinction of being my first issue of Savage Dragon, so I've been looking forward to talking about it on the FINcast since for some time now.
Very cool.
Figured this would be a good opportunity.
Yeah, and it seems like it's been a while since our last recording. I think I say that every recording, but this has probably been the longest since...
It has been the longest. It's going on almost 6 weeks, I think.
Yeah, and not necessarily our fault. It's just Eric's been kind of late with his books. I think a big part of that is he's moved to a new house and he's kind of fitting everything out, and he's got a new office space. And so I think that's pushed things late. So unfortunately with this episode, there's not a new issue of Savage Dragon like we thought there would be. And our main issue we're discussing is Supreme 66. And we're hoping by our next episode that, Savage Dragon 181 will be out.
Yep, that's definitely the hope.
Yeah.
But before we get to all that, you reading anything interesting, Craig?
Yeah, in the non kind of Erik Larsen universe or Erik related books, I'm reading a bunch of interesting things, but today for this podcast I'd like to talk about Orkstain, which I got to the table real late on. It's on issue 7 now, but I know the issues have taken a while to get out. It's a writer-artist.
I'm trying to remember. Did the creator break his hand at some point? Is that why it's been running late?
I don't know the back issue, the backstory to it, but I mean, just looking at these issues, I can tell it probably takes a ton of time. They're just hyper detailed. The artist is artist/writer is it James Stokoe, who people might know him from the what's that baseball book that was just on Kickstarter? Drawing a blank here. Sullivan Sluggers. Have you heard about that?
Have not heard about that.
It's his art.
That's funny.
It's a baseball / zombie kind of book, and it raised like a ton of money. I forget how much, but it did really well on Kickstarter, and it's by Mark Andrew Smith, who did Gladstones. And a bunch of other comics. Him and James Stokoe teamed up on an original graphic novel, like a hardcover, and did really, really well on it. And it kind of opened my eyes to his art. I've seen Orkstain around and didn't think it was a book for me. And after seeing that Kickstarter and seeing his art, I kind of went back and picked up issue 7 of Orkstain and loved it, and went back to eBay and back to my local comic shop and dug up all the back issues. There is a trade that collects 1 through 5 of Orkstain, and like I said, it's up to issue 7. I think the first issue came out in like 2010. So
it's also, I just checked, it's all available on Comixology.
Gotcha. Yeah,
I may check it out soon in that case.
Yeah, And James Stokoe just last week came out with Godzilla: The Half-Century War through IDW, which he's drawing, and I think he's writing that as well.
I kind of want to pick that book up. I recently put his blog on my RSS reader, so I've been following some preview art for that book.
Yeah.
It looks pretty intense.
Oh, it's just hyper detailed. It's super colorful. It's just he's an amazing artist. For those of you that don't, I've never heard of him. His name's spelled Stokoe. Look him up online. His blog is tremendous. And Orkstein, to sum it up, it's kind of like a fantasy book. I'm not even big into fantasy books, but it's all about these orcs who are kind of like goblins, and the world is just like a totally alien world where technology is all kind of like organic. It's almost like, to kind of make it basic, it's like Flintstones kind of technology where, everything's like a living thing, so they ride around on living things. Their weapons are made of living things.
Well, I do like weird fantasy series, so it does sound like it's really up my alley. I really don't know why I haven't got into it yet. Probably just because of availability. It is a hard series to find right now.
Right. I mean, there's no human characters. Everyone's like either an orc or,
In some ways, it kind of sounds like a spiritual successor to like ElfQuest or those sorts of books from the 90s.
It's super violent. It's got adult themes. It's just cool. And I know we've talked in the past about books like Prophet with Brandon Graham. And the funny thing is, if you read Stokoe's blog and Graham's blog, these guys are really good friends. I think they both live in Vancouver.
That would make sense.
And you can tell because it's got that same thing that Prophet has going for it, where you just like immersed in this like whole alien planet, and it seems like there's already a foreign language made up. They use these words over and over again, and different things that are just foreign to the English language, and you kind of learn what they mean. Technology is just out of this world, just like, I don't know, it's just like so alien and so cool.
I got a good look at a issue that I found, and I really liked the packaging. It was like it had a double wraparound cover that was very stylized, and it seemed like it had a lot of pages too, so it feels like you get a lot of content out of it too.
Right.
It definitely seems like a series I should have been reading from the beginning, but apparently it passed me over too.
Yeah, there's a ton of words in it, but it's also very action filled and very detailed filled. I mean, some of the details are just even so small on the page, you got to kind of squint to see them. So he must be drawing on these like huge, boards. I don't know, but the colors, everything about it's really an amazing book. And like I said, when it first came out, looking at the covers, I kind of just passed over it. I didn't think it was a book for me, and now, I mean, this guy's gone way up on my list as like one of my favorite artists going, out there right now. It's just amazing. So it's a story about this kind of thief orc. He's got one eye. You kind of learn the background as you go along, but with the orcs, I guess they're all kind of vile creatures pretty much. And the backstory is that they're all segregated into these factions that fight among themselves. And finally, there's this guy called the Orc Tsar that starts conquering all the different factions and having them all join as one big army. And at some point, I think it's in the first issue, he's talking to the Orc Tsar talks to an oracle, and the oracle tells him that whatever great treasure he's looking for, the key to it is an orc with one eye, a one-eyed orc. So for these issues, this Tsar is sending his minions to go find this one-eyed orc, and so they've collected hundreds and hundreds of orcs that have one eye, and I don't know how they're putting them through this test or whatever just to see if it's the one that they're looking for. So this guy's constantly on the run. He doesn't know why he's being chased down, and he meets all sorts of like fantastic kind of allies and villains along the way. So I can't stress it enough. Even the writing's solid, the artwork is solid. It's it's something, like I said, if you're into Prophet, it's even more accessible to Prophet, but with all the kind of alien and weird themes and that whole world that's already developed. It's a good read. And I came to it late, so I snapped up the first 7 issues, so it was kind of cool just reading them all at once. I think it will be tough going on, where if we're not getting an issue for every 3 months or so, that might make tough reading. But I'm in it for the long haul, and I'll probably buy anything that this guy makes right now until he, unless he lets me down for some reason. But his stuff's really amazing. So that was my choice.
Sounds really cool. I definitely want to check this out now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a trade that collects 1 through 5, and then 6 and 7 are out. So I know the trade was out of print, and then I think like a couple of weeks ago they I don't know if it was a second printing or whatever printing just was re-released. So it's definitely worth your time. And I know like you like that kind of stuff, Jim. I know you said you liked Prophet and those kind of books, that kind of style, sci-fi style. So I think that would be your alley. So what are you reading?
Well, I got my mitts on a new trade collection of a book. It's called Robo Hunter. This particular volume is Robo Hunter, the Droid Files Volume 1. And what it does, it collects, it's 400 pages. It collects a series that ran in the anthology series, the British anthology series, 2000 AD, back in the early 80s.
Right.
And it's about he's kind of a... it's about a guy, he lives in the future, and society is really dependent on robots, and sometimes those robots go wrong, and so they hire robo-hunters to track down these malfunctioning robots and either destroy them or repair them. And he gets suckered into getting drafted to be sent to this alien colony world that was supposed to be built by robot machines, and then human colonists would eventually follow. But everyone they sent afterwards disappeared, and so he's sent in to check, see what's going on, and he finds this world completely overrun by crazy robots. It's a comedy series in many respects. It starts out as kind of a kind of action adventure series. The character is, he's kind of like those crime noir type characters where they're kind of cynical all the time.
Right, like a Han Solo type guy, or
yeah, he's kind of Han Solo-ish, but actually Han Solo is probably a good description of him. It eventually becomes much more of an overt comedy series after the first major story arc, and it's really good. It's written by John Wagner and Alan Grant. I don't know if many American readers know who they are. I know both of them worked on Batman at certain points in the past.
Yeah,
but the best part about it is it's drawn by Ian Gibson, who's got this. I don't know if he has any real exposure in America, but he's very prolific in the UK and Europe.
Right.
And he's got he drew The Ballad of Halo Jones by Alan Moore. Okay. That's probably his most well-known work in America.
Mm-hmm. So for this story, like when it appeared originally, like I don't know much about 2000 AD. I mean, other than seeing it on the stands and knowing it's like a fantasy sci-fi magazine from the UK. When the stories come out, how many pages are each? I know there's multiple stories, right, in each issue, or
right. It's a weekly serial anthology, and every issue has 4 to 5 installments of ongoing series.
And it's always been like that, even in the 80s.
It's always been like that since the beginning. The very first issue had Dan Dare, Invasion, Harlem Heroes, and I forget the others. Flesh, no, not Flesh. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is,
So this is a 400-page anthology, so this is over...
Well, it's not a 400-page anthology. It reprints this one specific series that ran for decades.
Oh, really? So
it wasn't an ongoing series for decades. You got... Basically, how it works is you get, like, anywhere from 5 to 10 to 20 10 to 20 installments over that many weeks. Like for 10 weeks, Robo Hunter runs, and then it goes away for a while, and then it comes back in a year or two or sooner.
That's amazing though, because
yeah,
you're saying it's over a decade.
Yeah, I mean, Robo Hunter technically is, well, the last time it had a series in 2000 AD was back in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's sort of like a series of miniseries in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
Except that they all appear in one single comic instead of individual comics.
Right.
But anyway, in Robo Hunter's case, it reprints the first 3 or 4 major story arcs.
Yeah.
Virtus, Day of the Droids.
And is it always the same writer and artist?
Yes, that's one of the nice things about Robo Hunter is that for most of its run, it was written and drawn by the same team.
That's awesome. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it is, and this is only the first volume. There's 2 Droid Files. There's 2 Droid Files volumes. Both of them are about 400 pages long.
Yeah, I mean, and do you know, like, between the first story and the last story in that collection, is there, like, can you tell, like, differences in how, like, the artist and writer have evolved? I know you said it starts off kind of serious and then it gets more comedic.
Yes, and it's action-oriented, it's comedic, it definitely builds upon itself, and the characters evolve and change, and from where it starts to where basically the main story ends, mm-hmm. a lot has changed for the character. Time has passed, and if you're into that sort of thing, I mean, it's not real time like Dragon is, but if you like stories that develop over time, characters that change, events that matter,
yeah,
it's definitely that kind of a series.
And I guess most people that listening to this that are fans of Dragon, it seems like it would be up their alley. With having things that matter and time advancing.
Right.
So how much is this collection? Is it a hardcover?
No, it's soft cover. Here's the thing about it. It is an import from the UK.
Yeah.
They solicit in previews, and then they send the copies over, and you get it, and it has a UK price tag on the back and no American price tag. And so if you don't pre-order it, it's incredibly hard to find because nobody orders enough copies to have.
Right.
And there's like no way to back order them
mm-hmm.
because they have to be shipped overseas.
Right.
I didn't actually pre-order my copy. I missed it. It's been out for a couple of years now.
Uh-huh.
It's a series I like and I want to reread it. And so a couple weeks ago I decided I needed a copy. So I got on I think Amazon Marketplace.
Yeah.
And I found a copy for like $20, but they can go as high as like 30.
Yeah. Well, even $30 isn't bad for 400 pages.
Oh yeah, it's good value, definitely.
And being an import, but
yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, that's like I said, I never really got into that. I think what kind of turns me off from it is like just that it comes out weekly and having to keep up with 2000 AD as a magazine weekly.
Right.
But
I mean, I like to think of it like this. 4 issues of 2000 AD, and I'm sounding like a salesman right now, but in a given month you get 4 issues of 2000 AD. Each issue has 30 pages of story. It's the equivalent of buying 5 American comic books in a given month.
Yeah.
And it's my experience most comic readers buy more than 5 comics in a month.
Yeah, right, yeah. But I would be buying my comics on top of that, so I'd be spending way too much.
It costs a fortune, believe me. $5.25 an issue, and there's 50 issues a year.
Yeah. But it is cool. I wish there were more American comics, like anthologies like that. I might give up single issues and buy that. Like I liked how like Clint collected all of like Millar's comics in one location. I kind of just dropped that recently because there's too much good stuff out at this point. I can't keep up with everything, but
it's interesting. It's interesting you bring up Clint because, of course, Mark Millar is a British person, and Clint is like his answer to 2000 AD because he used to work for 2000 AD.
Yeah,
and he thinks he can do it better.
He's Scottish, right? Or is he?
Yeah, you know what? You're right. He is Scottish. My mistake. No insult to Mark Millar and his Scottish heritage. But My opinion of Clint isn't very high because it's all reprint material.
Yeah.
Or at least it's all available in other formats,
Yeah,
and I think it's a waste of time.
Too, yeah.
Whereas 2080, everything's if it's in 2080, it eventually gets a collection, and that's it. You can't get it any other way. There aren't single issues available. It isn't, it feels like if you're reading 2080, you're getting what 2080 offers.
Right.
And it isn't diluted through other editions.
Gotcha. Should we talk about Erik Larsen related news, which is kind of sparse this episode, but
sparse, but very late breaking and actually very well, I say shocking, but surprising. I guess on Twitter, Erik broke the news that Corey Hampshire is going to be drawing the next 2 issues of Supreme solo. I believe that's 67 and 68, instead of using Erik's breakdowns like he's done for the previous 3 issues.
Right.
4 issues.
And that will be interesting. And the next, I wonder if that's going to be for the rest of the run, or at least, I know he's saying, I think they said Supreme 67 and 68. I have a feeling if that goes well, it'll just, continue on for the rest of Erik's run on this book.
Right.
I could be wrong. The interesting part of that is that, it's the issue that features Omni-Man in 67. I would have liked to seen Erik's layouts on that, but I've really liked what I've seen with what Corey Hampshire's done, and Corey has posted a few pictures on his Facebook of Omni-Man in action and Supreme, and I don't know if it's going to be in 67 or if it was just him kind of warming up or screwing around, but from what I've seen, his solo stuff's pretty damn good. I enjoy it, so I don't.
Yeah, he definitely's got a neat style to it, and I'm actually curious on if he's going to continue trying to draw in that Erik Larsen type style, or if he's going to try to do his own thing without the layouts to guide him.
Yeah, and I think it's more like it's the layouts that are coming through that we're seeing like Erik's style in. I think if he gets away from those layouts, you'll see less of that. Well, you'll definitely see less of that Erik influence. So it should be interesting. I've seen, I haven't seen much of his solo pencils, but I've seen a lot of his kind of sketches that he's done at commission sketches that he's done at conventions, and I really, really like what I've seen. So I think he's got more of like a Greg Capullo feel to him than a Larsen. But that might be just me. But I like it. I definitely like it.
It'll definitely be interesting to see what they look like in a month or two.
Right.
Other big news, Supreme news actually, Erik has announced via Twitter, I believe, that issue 70 of Supreme will be his last. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen him last at least a year, maybe 12 issues. And
I think 12 issues would have been perfect. That would have been enough for 2 trades and, whatever stories he wants to tell. Of course, if he only had a story to tell that would last until issue 70, I mean, fair enough, but I don't know, it feels like an odd number.
Right. I mean, what issue did the reboot? Well, not really reboot, but what was the Alan Moore issue? 63, was it?
63, yes.
So Erik didn't really start until 64.
I guess it's 7 issues. I mean, you can stuff 7 issues in an affordable trade. I guess that works.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish it would have been longer, but hey, it is what it is. I'll take what I can get.
Yeah, for as long as it lasts.
Yeah. Would you think you will stick with Supreme after Erik leaves?
Honestly, it depends entirely who the creative team is and where it gets left off, because I need to make cuts, and I only got on the series because of Erik.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I know, I think they just announced also that Rob Liefeld is going to be taking over Bloodstrike. Which,
really?
Yeah, I'm not, I don't know.
My opinion of Bloodstrike is non-existent, so.
I like the artist that they have now, and what's his name, the writer, the guy from Hack Slash.
Oh, the guy from Hack Slash.
Is the writer, I think. But I don't know the artist's name, but I really like the art. It's kind of got that kind of Invincible feel on Bloodstrike, and I don't want to be a Liefeld basher or anything like that. His art,
Tim Seeley.
his art isn't really my cup of tea. I mean, when I was younger, I loved Liefeld comics, and I mean, I like his characters, obviously, and I like what these relaunches have done with all these new creative teams. So, I don't know. I don't really want to see Liefeld back. I feel like Youngblood's got that Liefeld feel, and that's what, that's what I'd like to see continue with the Liefeld look, but I would have liked to see Bloodstrike stick with the artists that they've had, but whatever.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see, who inherits Supreme after Erik, if anybody.
Yeah, I am curious to see who they get next, or if they just end the series. I mean, that's always a possibility too. Still sort of surprising, but I guess we all knew it wasn't going to last forever. He was only doing it, because he, I think he got talked into it. He said before.
Yeah, I don't know really. I can't remember if we talked about it or if he said exactly how. I mean, I think you're right. I think Eric Stevenson approached Larsen and kind of got him to agree to do it. So, shall we talk about Supreme issue 66, which
I think we should.
Is out this week.
Yeah, so it is out, and
you guys have your copies out there listening. Grab them and flip through them with us as we
follow along with us.
When you hear the bell ring, turn the page.
Turn the page. Yes.
The cover is pretty brutal. Let's start with that. I don't. We don't see that in the book at all. It's one of those kind of covers, but it was kind of a funny little touch of that, the blood splatter and there's an ear just sitting there. It's a pretty vicious looking cover.
Yeah, the ear is what makes the cover, I think.
Yeah.
It just gives that sense of motion that I think Eric's really good about. It's just
like if you could see the guy's face that Supreme's pummeling, it would just be like an oozing puddle of guts.
I don't know how to describe this properly, but he's lifting his arm back and not just holding it there, because the blood splatter and the ear followed his fist as it.
Yeah, it's really dynamic. It's cool. Eric's good with making his work really fluid looking. So, first page, the name of the story is The Awakening. And how do you interpret that on this? Maybe this is something to talk about at the end.
The name, The Awakening?
Yeah, it's something to talk about.
I think I glossed over the name when I read it, but now that you mention it, I'm not really sure. I mean,
I think let's touch back on that at the end. We'll try to remember.
Yeah.
But I think there's a couple of different ways to interpret that based on this issue. And this issue kind of opens up with Ethan and Diana. Ethan being the Ethan here is the Alan Moore Supreme that was the main character of this book for the issues directly preceding Erik's run.
Right.
And he's just the kind of the Clark Kent counterpart, which cracks me up always with the joke with Superman is, you put a pair of glasses on and no one recognizes them. I think it's even funnier with Ethan because the guy's got snow white hair. He's got the build of like a 25-year-old weightlifter.
Right.
And because he wears glasses, no one realizes he's Supreme. That cracks me up, but hey, it's comics, Okay.
Yeah. Of course, I mean, being my really first experience with this character, I find it kind of funny that he's a comic book artist who draws Superman comics.
Yeah.
I always thought that was an interesting twist on the whole thing.
Right. And it's Omni-Man, right?
Right, he draws Omni-Man, but Omni-Man, of course, is a Superman analog.
Right.
Who's, of course, based off Supreme's exploits.
Right, and had nothing...
Many layers to that.
And had nothing to do, and came before Kirkman's Omni-Man, which we'll get to later on. But, it opens up with, I guess they try to go back to the Dazzle Comics headquarters, which is where they worked. And they get there, and now it's like a coffee shop. And they're like, what the hell is going on? And I don't really know. I wish Gavin Higginbotham was here to talk to us, because I don't really know what happened in these previous Alan Moore issues with, reality shifting every time there was like a new Supreme or whatever. But it seems like,
Right.
I don't know if you can kind of explain it to me, but it seems like ever since.
Well, I'm pretty good with I'm pretty good with interpreting the comic book. What do I want to call it? Reality.
Yeah.
Well, what seems to have happened is, after the Citadel crashed, reality has been revised once again with the release of Mean Supreme, and I don't know, I've never read the Alan Moore issues, so I don't understand if there was a mechanism in place for that we as readers would see that.
Right.
But in this case, it appears that, I don't know. It's like, details have been changed around them, and because they were like involved in the events that caused it, they're more aware of it.
Right. Yeah, it's like, I mean, as they're walking around, they kind of say, well, what is it? Here.
You know what? You know what I think may have happened?
Go ahead.
Because Mean Supreme got released, the world has reverted to the previous Image Universe Supreme.
Right. That's the
details.
feeling I get. I'm just like, it's weird. I guess the characters that weren't in Mean Supreme's, Image Universe world previously, I still have their old memories, and they're slowly starting to fade away.
Yeah, as they get integrated into the new reality.
Yeah, yeah. So I know they're saying, like the Omegaopolis looks different, like dirtier, grittier.
Right, because it reflects Mean Supreme's disposition, being a meaner, grittier Superman than what Ethan was.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, Erik can clarify at some point down the road, or it will just come clear to us as we read more issues, but I think you're...
Well, you bring up an interesting point. Ethan being a Supreme may not be affected by these revision changes, but Diana, being an ordinary human living in this world, the revisions are going to affect her more... obviously, I guess.
Right. So, I don't know how. I don't think we see any of the other Supremes that we've seen, like Squeak.
No, we don't.
Issue. So we don't know how their memory is getting affected, but we definitely know as Ethan and Diana are walking around, everything's changing. Ethan's apartment's gone. It's just this hole in the ground. There's no you don't see any kind of aftermath from the destruction of Supreme's floating was it the floating fortress he had?
Yeah, the Citadel. But that does explain why nobody noticed the death and destruction that would have caused when it crashed.
Yeah, so you get a feeling that reality is just kind of bending back to the way it was pre-Alan Moore, the Supreme's Image universe.
Right.
So.
And I think the hole where Ethan's apartment used to be sort of kind of represents that he has no place in this world. It's like his whole life has just been, he just doesn't exist anymore. The world doesn't need another Supreme, so it doesn't take into account him being around.
Definitely. Whereas like Diana's apartment, as you see, is still there. But, Ethan's is gone because in this reality, there is no Ethan. Supreme is always, Supreme 100% of the time. He doesn't really have an alter ego, I don't think. So we see that reality's kind of changing and Ethan's apartment's gone, and then it skips back to a bunch of kind of freak mutants. It looks like they're robbing a bank truck. And Supreme comes on the scene, and it's funny because you look at these bad guys, and they kind of look like the Uglies Unlimited guys from Savage Dragon.
I thought they looked like, Bud Ugly was one of them.
Yeah,
right?
I guess. But do you remember like when they were doing the whole Uglies Unlimited? Erik kind of had those as like villains for a while. They had captured.
No,
She-Dragon.
I don't remember any of that.
They all looked kind of green, and they had those kind of like Abomination style ears and stuff like that. So I'm wondering if
the scroll shit.
Yeah. I'm wondering if it's that same kind of guys that are from Savage Dragon, or if that's just Erik doing his generic baddie.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to tell really. I mean they do obviously look like Oh, well, they look like your typical Erik Larsen green guys.
Yeah. And it's funny. You would think, Supreme being Supreme and being world famous, that these guys would learn that, shooting him with bullets isn't going to do crap. But,
Well, this one guy, he seems to be pretty on the ball. I don't think this gun's going to do much, but I'm going to use it anyway.
Yeah. And Mean Supreme just kind of blasts his arm off. And it really reminded me of when Erik did his Solar Man run in Savage Dragon. It's that same kind of character. Solar Man, for those of you that don't remember or didn't read it, Solar Man was a character in Savage Dragon which kind of filled this Mean Supreme role, the evil type Superman role. And Solar Man, I think it was in the 130s of Savage Dragon around that time.
Yeah, he pulled no punches. He killed anyone Punisher style.
Yeah.
Anyone he perceived as a negative or evil influence.
Judge, jury, executioner.
Yeah.
So, I love the panel as you go along where he just uses optic blast and just kind of completely blows the guy's brain out the back of his head. It's kind of a funny...
So it's those small touches that really make this book.
Yeah, it leaves the guy with the one arm just alive to spread the word that he's back, and he's done with giving free passes. So moving on, we have Ethan and Diana still kind of wondering what the hell's going on. What were you saying?
I said, is Ethan and Diana just getting reacclimated to the world and discovering that things are different? Her apartment, like I said before, her apartment still exists, so the world's taking into account her existence.
Right.
But it's created this whole new backstory for her, apparently, where she finds a message on an answering machine of her current boyfriend, who is most certainly not Ethan Crane.
Yeah, and it's cool because it's like she hears the message and then Ethan's like, what's going on, and all of a sudden I think now reality is starting to screw with her.
Creep into her head, and because if nobody else around remembers any of this, why should she?
Right. I think that she's getting revised, that she really will probably get to the point where she doesn't know Ethan Crane.
Right. And you got to wonder where that's going to go, because that brings up a lot of really interesting ideas, at least for me.
Like Ethan will be a man out of place,
Yeah, and I mean, their relationship, it seems pretty integral to the book, so I'm pretty sure we're going to see her again real soon.
Right.
But it'll be interesting how they deal with this.
Right. So you get the panel coming up next where it's like just that shot of Supreme. Where is he in this panel? He's kind of, it looks like he's in some snow-capped areas.
But that's the thing, there's a city in the foreground. I mean, the background. Yeah. Nestled inside this. I don't know. It seems, the perspective on this is really weird because it seems like he's a giant.
Yeah, I don't know.
Towering over a tiny city.
Yeah, I guess. I didn't get that, though. I mean, at first I thought maybe it was he was on Antarctica, but there's a city. Then I thought maybe he's on the moon because they put the Citadel on the moon, but there's an atmosphere, so that can't be it.
No, he's looking over, what's the name of the city? Megalopolis?
Oh, all right.
That's definitely Megalopolis. Maybe there was something in the Alan Moore run or previously where the city was nestled in a mountainous valley or something.
All right, yeah, because I didn't get that. I mean,
it is kind of a weird place to put a city.
Right.
It is kind of, and like I said, it's got some weird perspective.
Huh?
I don't know. It could be a little bit more clear about what's going on.
Yeah. And so kind of Suprema catches back up with Mean Supreme, who in his reality doesn't have a sister, so he doesn't know who she is and really can't be bothered by her. And she's trying to talk sense into him, but it's not working. He doesn't give a damn. And he's really just an all-around jerk to her.
And she doesn't really quite understand what's going on, so she's trying to appeal to his better judgment when he doesn't have any. And, of course, that'll get you in trouble every time.
I had to laugh at, like, his hokey kind of villain-type talk. Like, his one part where he's like, you must be thinking of that Milksop Supreme from your lily-livered reality. It's like, that's a little over the top, but it's kind of funny. It's funny comic book writing.
Of course, he remembers the previous Supreme in the previous universe. I don't know. It's got to be all tied to some metaphysical thing tied into the supremacy or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Comic book logic.
Well,
comic
I don't know.
science.
I mean, it might not affect the Supremes for some reason. Because she remembers too. Suprema remembers too. So there's something going on where the Supremes don't, remember that. I mean, they do remember what happened before, whereas like normal humans aren't remembering, or reality's screwing with them. So, because don't forget, you have from the previous issue, you have what's his name, Dax is the duck. What's his name?
Right, Dax. Darius Duck.
Yeah,
he's still out there somewhere.
Yeah, so.
I guess, I don't know. I guess with the supremacy destroyed, maybe they all keep existing. I don't know. The logic is a little lost on me here because if the world got revised, why does Suprema still exist?
Right.
I mean, nah.
Right.
She's not actually Supreme. She's a supporting character of Supreme.
Well,
so
and we're not seeing anyone disappear from reality.
Good point.
We're just seeing people kind of meld back into the current reality, where people are losing their former memories, I think, except for the Supremes. But I'm sure it's going to be all explained. It's part of the story, and I think that's what they're trying to do, is make you kind of guess at what's going on.
Because, of course, the really confusing thing about this issue comes next, with Ethan Crane has gone to a local comic shop. I think we're to assume it's the same one we saw back in issue 63, except for it's all different. It seems a much more Liefeldian world.
There's no Dazzle Comics in this world, and it's Image Comics, so it's kind of like, like I think we were talking about before, whereas like this universe is the, Mean Supreme universe that happened, before Moore's run. So it's all image-based books. So I guess they're reading about characters that, I guess the comic books are made about characters that exist in the real world, which you see in Savage Dragon.
Well, actually, that's a good point. You do see that in Savage Dragon. There is a Savage Dragon comic book in Savage Dragon that's based on his adventures. But in Invincible, there is no Invincible comic book in Invincible.
That's true.
There's Science Dog, the most popular comic book in Invincible.
But there's also in Invincible, didn't Omni-Man write books? So all of his adventures are cataloged. Wasn't Omni-Man an author?
But he was a novelist, and he heavily fictionalized his exploits.
Yeah.
He didn't write superhero stories. He wrote science fiction novels based on his days living in space.
Yeah, but is it that far-fetched to think that they would be like, made in comic book form? Translated to comics or whatever. But anyway, I mean, it could be anything.
I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, at face value, that there would be an Invincible comic book when later on in the issue, Omni-Man shows up.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's I don't know. I think there's something going on that's going to explain the incongruities here.
Yeah.
It's definitely all part of the revision stuff, but
I just honestly took it as it's done in Savage Dragon, where there's a Savage Dragon comic in Savage Dragon because they write about his exploits. That
right.
From the way I took it was that there's an Invincible comic out there too because they're writing about the exploits of Invincible.
Yeah, but it works with Savage Dragon because he has no secret identity. In Invincible, all the characters have secret identities.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, you also don't know. Maybe the books.
Maybe they fictionalize everything.
Yeah.
Except the public knowledge stuff.
Anyway, so
I don't know. Comic books within comic books.
Head's gonna explode.
Yeah. I wonder if Supreme 66 in Supreme 66
Yeah, right.
as the events as we read them.
So Ethan's looking for Omni-Man, which is the book he draws, right?
Yeah, he draws it, right. Diane writes it.
Yeah, so the guy's like, oh, Omni-Man, he's like, by Dazzle Comics, and the guy's like, you mean Dazzler, like in the X-Men? So all the comics that exist kind of are the same comics that exist in the real world. So
yeah,
he's like, oh, Omni-Man. He pulls out an issue of Invincible that stars Invincible's Omni-Man, which of course is different than the Omni-Man, Alan Moore created for this series. Same name, but it's pretty cool, kind of
completely unrelated.
Yeah. So Ethan looks at it and he's just basically like, this isn't the book that he drew. So he's like, I think he's getting the picture that he's screwed and everything's changing around him.
Right.
So we snap back to a great little splash page of Suprema giving Supreme a nice shot.
Sucker punch.
Yeah. And basically just starts kicking the crap out of him. And he's not fighting, either he's not fighting back or he's taken by surprise, because I think he's probably a lot stronger than she is. So.
Yeah, he does seem to not really be reacting in these next couple of pages. You'd think if he had any inclination, he'd be. Every time he gets hit, he looks like he's limp. So maybe he is intentionally just taking the hits just to show off.
Yeah.
Because then he gets knocked into a mountain as it happens. And just kind of walks out. Well, breaks out.
Yeah, it's a great, you can tell it's definitely an Erik Larsen kind of designed page there when he busts out of the mountain with the BRAKKA-BA-DOOM. It's a pretty cool layout. And he's like, basically he's had enough. So the tables turn and he's just beating the crap out of Supreme and pretty bad. And the whole way through, it kind of cracks me up. And sometimes I feel like this is a little over the top with Supreme, and I guess that's probably the point. But he always like harps on the you worthless cowards, you liberals, you let this world be overrun with rapists and killers and blah blah. He always throws the liberal line out and all that. It's really heavy-handed.
Yeah. Of course, I'm not sure if that's a previous character trait that he was.
I don't think
very conservative, very proactive, conservative in his ways, or if it's I don't know, a jab. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think he was. I'm thinking the early Supreme issues. He was definitely an a-hole and definitely like the jerk Superman, but I don't think they kind of mentioned the whole
is played up as political affiliations.
And to be honest, I don't think that people use the term like as strongly back then when the original Supreme comics were coming out. So I don't know. I mean, it's always been liberals and conservatives, but it seems like the past 10 years, it's really 10 or so, maybe 15 years, it's really gotten over the top. We're going back and forth about liberals and conservatives and commies and whatever. But anyway, so he's basically... Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's too bad Supreme and Super Patriot didn't get into more of a political debate last issue.
Yeah.
Because Super Patriot's super liberal.
Yeah, definitely. And even, was it last issue when even Supreme made a comment about like, oh, we have a Muslim for president or something like that?
Yeah, he did. I think he said something like that.
Yeah, it's just super over the top, but I don't know. I wonder how conservatives feel that read this book.
I'm not sure. Well, it's the weird part about it is who does this book really appeal to? I think any good comic should appeal to everyone on a certain level.
Right.
But clearly Supreme spouting off hate speech and ignorance is not going to play well if he's coming across as a stereotype.
Right.
But I know he's supposed to be played up as kind of ridiculous in his stance. So.
Yep.
So he starts creaming on Suprema some more. And I think he's probably about to kill her when he gets stopped by
Turn the page.
Omni-Man.
Yeah, it's a sweet splash page. Corey Hampshire does a good rendition of Omni-Man there. It just looks pretty cool.
That's a pretty good mustache.
Yeah. I've always liked the design of Omni-Man, how he doesn't wear boots. It's kind of silly, but it makes sense at the same time. He's really got no need for them. I'm sure his feet,
Yeah.
Like.
Of course, he originally his original costume had shoes.
Right.
He's still wearing his prisoner jumpsuit, I think, from that arc where he was prisoned.
Oh, and this?
He's
No,
like
that's his, like, what's COP stand for? Coalition of Planets. That's his, like...
Oh, that's right.
It's like...
Man, it's been a while. I got to reread Invincible. It's been a long time since I've really reread the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a great book. But
it should be a pretty good fight next time, because here's a character who can actually stand up to Supreme, or at least we hope so, or think so.
Yeah, toe to toe. And it makes you wonder where this fits in. Maybe it doesn't matter with Invincible continuity, but...
The only powers Viltrumites don't have are sensory and eye powers.
Right. So, yeah. The splash is pretty cool, too, because, like, you look at Suprema and she's just all bloodied up. And you would think that, if Omni-Man didn't show up, Supreme would probably get pretty close to killing her. So, it just goes to show you how vicious this guy is, and he's definitely more of a villain than a hero.
Right.
And, I think that's the direction, Erik has been pushing all along. We're going to see those other Supreme versions out there kind of hunting him down and trying to stop him.
And that's kind of why I'm kind of worried about this, the run ending with issue 70, because it only feels like things have just gotten started.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it feels like we're still kind of reeling from, the opening of this series and this issue. We're still trying to figure out how things are going to move on. And with Erik ending at issue 70, it just seems like it's a little soon, but we'll see.
Yeah. One thing I learned a long time ago is don't second guess Erik Larsen.
Yeah. So that
Go
ahead. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, he generally knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed. So, I mean, look, I'm just happy that we're getting 7 or 8 issues out of him on Supreme on another, comic. So, I'm here for the ride. We'll see, how it ends up and, how it compares to other great runs he's had on other books. So, but, Supreme versus Omni-Man should be a classic. It'll be real interesting to see how it ends up. And that's what we'll see supposedly next issue.
Next quote-unquote month.
Right. So that wraps up Supreme 66.
Overall, I think it's a good issue. It's kind of a transitional issue. Honestly, not a lot happens. You get a good gratuitous fight. You see, really, Ethan Crane's story moves forward more than Mean Supreme's story.
Yeah.
We start to see what kind of world Ethan has gotten himself into. So I'm more interested in the ramifications of that really than the throwdown between Omni-Man and Supreme next issue. While I hope that fight's really epic, I hope it doesn't take up too much.
Right. I agree that when I first read this issue, it didn't grab me as much. And actually, even just having this conversation with you and talking about the possibilities have kind of made me like this issue even more. And I found that, I think, with most of these Supreme comics that I've read since issue 63, the first readings, I've been like, it's okay. But after like a second or third reading, I've gotten much more out of the books. And yeah, I'm with you. Like with the Supreme Omni-Man, I think it'll be interesting, and I hope it's a great battle. But I also want to see what's going on with the rest of the Supremes. I want to get some answers on what's going on with reality. I want to find out, how the other Supremes are gonna play a role in this book. There's a lot that can go on in this book, and a lot of fun kind of things could go any which way with the villains and characters in this book, and I'd like to see it fleshed out.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. So now we're going to take a few minutes and we're going to talk about a issue that's very near and dear to me, an issue of Savage Dragon, of course, issue number 90. Savage Dragon number 90 was my first issue of Savage Dragon. It came out, when did it come out? It came all the way back out in 2001.
Wow.
11 years ago now. I'm getting old. It was weird. 2001, I graduated high school that summer, and I had my first job, and I was out on my own for the first time. And because I had a job, I finally had disposable income, so I could actually go to a comic shop regularly, which is something I was not doing previously, due to transportation, money, access, that sort of thing.
Right.
So I was basically burying myself in all kinds of things. I think I was reading, I was getting into CrossGen at the time, CrossGen Comics, if you remember that company. Yep. That really was a major influence on me, and I think I'd gotten into Noble Causes. I think that had just launched.
That sounds about right.
By Jay Faber, and that really got me excited about independent superheroes, because at the time, I think my main reading material was I was reading Earth X from Marvel Comics, which was like Jim Kruger's like alternate reality, possible future Marvel epic, which was pretty good. But I was reading a lot of Marvel. I wasn't into DC quite yet. I was reading Fables. I was getting into Vertigo. But it was weird. One day I walked in. Must have been in September. I don't know, these cover dates are never really accurate when the book was actually out. But I look over on the wall and I see this black cover. All right. And I'd seen other issues of Savage Dragon from previous months. I think 89 I definitely thumbed through. Or maybe I didn't thumb through it. I saw it. I don't know, it looked kind of flashy, but I saw this cover. And it was all black, and it has... just to describe the cover to our audience, we'll post a picture of it. It's all black, except it's got Frank and Dragon. And Dragon's like... squatted down in front of a tombstone, and Frank's telling him that she's dead, Dragon, and you killed her. And it's weird, because when I was younger, I have vague memories of watching the Savage Dragon cartoon. I only remember like one episode, and that's like really vague. Even that one, it was like Dragon goes to like this haunted house, and like he's trying to find out his identity, but Alex is with him. And I see this cover, and the only she I can think of is it's Alex. Right. All right. I have nothing to go on for that. And I go, all right, I want to find out how Alex died. From the cartoon I watched like 10 years ago. And so I pick it up and I thumb through it, and I don't know, the style of it was just so different than what I was expecting.
What were you expecting?
Honestly, you know what I was expecting? I was expecting early 90s Liefeld.
Yeah.
Because early 90s Image Comics was a major turnoff to me. Rob Liefeld, I know you were a fan of his in his early days, but I wasn't.
I was also, 12, 13 years old, but...
Right. It's just, I don't know, the muscles and I don't know, and the over-sexualization of women. I actually found it all kind of embarrassing to be in the same zip code as it being with my parents nearby. Right. So I avoided all that stuff like the plague. All right? And I kind of lumped Savage Dragon in with that. I had a vague, I saw articles about Savage Dragon in like Wizard once in a while. I ignored all of it. And I went on reading Fantastic Four and X-Men.
Right.
But in 2001, I was, really trying to expand my horizons, trying to get out from the Marvel, being the Marvel zombie I was pretty much had been for forever. And I don't know, I thumbed it open, and it was definitely different. The art style, number one, was big and it's bold and lots of really interesting, black line work. And then, of course, there's Neutron Bob. This issue, being my first issue, is probably why Neutron Bob is my favorite character, my favorite, quote-unquote villain in Savage Dragon.
Yeah. Well, he's got a real cool design, there's no doubt.
He's got awesome design. And, of course, after I picked this one up, I immediately picked up 89 because he was on the cover of that one.
Not to interrupt you, but just before we get too far, it is kind of cool that you said, the cover grabbed you and everything, because I think it was just yesterday or the day before. I mean, at this point, I'm not sure if you know, but, Joe Kubert died. He passed away.
Yeah, I did learn that yesterday. That was definitely a loss for all of us.
And Erik posted a bunch of his favorite Joe Kubert covers, and then he posted a couple of Savage Dragon covers, and this cover, he said, was really influenced by Joe Kubert, which you can see just by the layout and with the text bubbles, which
right.
By this time in 2001, you really weren't seeing, and it goes on to today, you're not really seeing many comic covers, if any, that have text bubbles, the speech bubbles on the cover.
Yeah, you're right. You don't see that at all anymore.
Right,
really.
And I know Erik said, this cover was really influenced by, past Joe Kubert covers. So it is interesting that you said that this grabbed you, and it is one of the more iconic kind of Savage Dragon covers.
But yeah, the cover grabbed me, but it was definitely the content that kept me around. Right. I mean, I read it, and it was so long ago. It's really hard for me to know exactly what I understood and what I didn't. Yeah. Because now I know all of this. I know all of the background details of what the hell all this was, what was going on. Because at the time, issue 90, we were in the Savage world. Everything was different. Dragon was still trying to find out what all the differences in the timelines were, who knew him, who didn't.
Right.
And, when I came onto it, I sort of got a notion about all that because, Dragon was Erik was pretty good about recapping things.
Yeah, and this issue specifically, because when we talked about, doing a review of this issue, I went back and reread it, and this is a pretty text-heavy issue, and he really goes through it pretty well on what's going on. So if you were a new reader at the time and you read this, you would be pretty much up to speed on what's going on.
Yeah, the first 3 pages with just Dragon and Bob in the car, just talking about, the previous, the history of this new world and where Dragon's from and all the differences and that sort of thing, that really got me up to speed. Yeah. So that when later on, like when Rock and the other underground mutants show up, I got the sense that these were characters that Dragon knew previously. Right. But they were, their details, the slight details in the past has changed, and I could pick up on that, and I think that's really what pulled me into it, is because I got this sense of this huge backstory that I wasn't yet privy to,
right.
But I wanted to.
Right.
I wanted to go get into all that stuff and find out what their deal is, what's changed.
I envy anybody that's getting to Savage Dragon right now, because it's a ton of fun to go back and piece things together and get back issues off eBay. I mean, it's the same writer and artist for 180 issues, so it's fun to jump into something and be like, oh, I want to go back and go through back issue bins and eBay. I dropped Savage Dragon, I think around like issue 12 or something like that, when I kind of got into my junior year of high school and wanted to spend money on a car and whatever, and girls or whatever, whatever it was, it just got out of comics.
Right.
And then the same kind of, like you were saying, after college, I got a real job and I had some disposable income, I kind of crept back into it. And I got back into it around like the 70s, around right before I think the issue right before the Savage World, right before, like 75, 76. And but yeah, it was real fun going back and trying to piece everything together and getting 10 issues at a time on eBay or whatever. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I immediately picked up trades, for all the trades that were available, really. Starting at Baptism of Fire and working forward from there. So within a year, I was as caught up as I could be with all the trades, and of course, I'd added it to my pull list. And I think issue 100 was looming, and the hype was building. And that's when I got involved in the Savage Dragon message board community.
Oh, okay.
Remember that old? I don't know if you were on the old message board with all the old tree style.
Yep.
Yeah. This was of course that style was out of fashion even then.
Yeah, I mean, even when we were talking to Joe Keating back a few episodes ago, I remember when he used to post on that. I remember Kirkman posting on that. And as long as I've been posting on it, Gavin's been on it. And there was this group of guys, for people that don't know, but there was a group of fanboys that called themselves the Brotherhood of the Fin, and they've all pretty much, most of them have kind of moved on. I think some still collect, but they don't really talk as much. But they used to be a real tight knit community of Dragon fans that used to have their own separate kind of little club and message board and stuff like that.
And that was a huge boon to getting into Savage Dragon, was having that community there to help me fill in the blanks and figure out where to go next and all that stuff. And
this is definitely like a great issue, though, to pick as like your first issue. The art's gorgeous. Yeah. The panel layouts, I love those like 12 box panel layouts kind of. And the beginning of this book is kind of like a buddy action flick where you have Neutron Bob and Dragon are kind of like buddies just trying to survive on the road, and it's got humor, and action, and it's just fun. It's really dynamic.
You got these two weird looking characters, Dragon and Bob. They're in a truck in like a bombed out city, and you turn the page and they're being attacked by space aliens.
Yeah, it's so off the wall.
It's so completely bananas.
Yep.
I knew I was hooked.
Yeah, and there's a splash page on here. It's nothing but a sound effect and like a big atomic type explosion, and it's just gorgeous.
It is. That's yeah. And then little things. I mean, like I said, I didn't know all of the stuff. Like when the Demolitioner shows up. I had no idea what his real connection was.
The Demolisher? Is it?
Yeah, the Demolisher. It would be a while before I ever got to Brad as a character in the
Yeah,
trades.
Brad was Alex's boyfriend.
Stalker ex-boyfriend.
Blames Dragon for her death, and I think turns to the creator. Interesting side note is that rereading this, I kind of...
Oh, I said Brad. His name is
Dale Fisher.
I always go back to Brad.
There's an interesting side note on here, and I forget where it talks about, but I didn't catch this the first time reading around, but they actually say Johnny Redbeard, who's the creator, he created the Sky Riders and the Rats, and I don't know, I guess I blocked that out or just don't remember reading that, but it kind of, the Sky Riders are a bunch of guys that rode like dragons and stuff, which first appeared in the Savage world, and I didn't think there was ever like an explanation other than they were like mutations or something, but I guess a lot of these characters came about because of Johnny Redbeard, aka the creator,
right,
who has the powers to give people superpowers, kind of went wild and just gave a bunch of people powers. So he turned Dale into the Demolisher. And then funny fact number 2 is that it's not this issue, and I can't remember which issue it is. Again, Gavin Higginbotham would know. But for like a whole issue, the Demolisher, Erik calls him the Devastator. Forget what issue it is. But
it's got to be the next one because he died.
Is it next issue? Well,
it's gotta
the whole issue, Erik changes his name from Demolisher to Devastator, and I remember when this came out, talking about it in the boards, and Erik was like, "Whoops, I screwed up there." So it's just funny. His name changes from one issue to the other. And if you look, there already is actually a character called the Demolisher. So there's like a Demolisher 1 and 2. There's a Demolisher that was part of the Annihilators, which was Cyber Force's kind of splinter group from way back in the gang war type years. So he named this guy Demolisher, so it was Demolisher 2. And then he named him Devastator in another issue, and there's already another Devastator. So it's funny. I mean,
it's funny to us.
It probably can get a little confusing, but the way I look at that is like, what's the chances that, it's probably good chances that superheroes and supervillains, there would be, guys named the same name because it's like rock bands or whatever, there's always somebody else, named something that's similar or whatever. But it was kind of funny that, a couple of issues or an issue later, Erik totally changes the guy's name and just screwed up. But regardless, the Demolisher's got a really cool design, kind of.
No, it's just a really good issue, and even if it wasn't my favorite, my first, it would still be one of my favorites.
The fight scene between Dragon and Demolisher is pretty damn awesome. The way, just the action in it, punches thrown, the way, it's like Demolisher's fist is coming right out of the panel. Maybe, it just looks neat. I like it.
So yeah, Savage Dragon 90.
Yeah, it's a good issue, and at the end of that, Frank breaks the news that that Dragon killed Alex Wilde, and you have to read the next issue to find out how. I don't think it's explained.
Well, they specify here that it was during Dragon's rampage.
Right.
Yeah, Frank in the previous page mentions when he was possessed. That's when it happened. We wouldn't actually see it, I believe, until issue 100 with all those flashback stories.
Yeah, it's true. Yep, you're right. But yeah, it's a good issue. I enjoy it. A lot of people, I think we've said this before, but I think the Savage World turned off a lot of people. But I think,
well, definitely got me.
Yeah,
in.
And I think that time, I really feel like that's been Erik's peak on the book so far. I think the art style, the writing, I think Erik was just super into, what was going on in that period of Savage Dragon, and it shows. And I'm with you. I like what's his name, Neutron Bob, and I like how they were kind of like buddy for those few issues. It made for a fun little dynamic. So good issue to start on.
Yeah, I gotta wonder if it wasn't for this particular issue, if I'd ever become a fan. I'm sure I would have investigated it later at some point.
Does it blow you?
I don't know. It was a huge gateway comic too. Now that I think about it, I mean, from Savage Dragon, it led me to the big launch about Invincible and Tech Jacket.
Yeah.
Well, Noble Causes did that too. I mean, I was really into the Image superheroes at that time, and of course, and Invincible led me to Walking Dead and so on and so forth. So really, they all kind of...
So you've been collecting Savage Dragon now regularly for over 10 years. Does that kind of blow your mind?
It is blowing my mind right now, yes.
So, and the other thing is this came out a month before, 9/11, which,
You're right. It
changed everything basically on how we live our normal life and fear of terrorism and all that stuff.
And that would all influence Savage Dragon at some point in the preceding years.
Yeah, we'd never get the Osama bin Laden issue, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a good issue. I enjoyed it a lot.
So I think that about wraps it up for our Savage FINcast episode 8. Next episode, we highly anticipate we will be reviewing Savage Dragon 181, which we're all pretty excited to get our hands on finally. I don't think we currently have a street date on that yet, so question marks.
Yeah, I can't imagine it's going to be too much longer, hopefully. It sounds like he's wrapping it up from...
Yeah, next week is unlikely, but I got to... Wrapping it up?
Or finished, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping we see it 2 weeks from now.
So
before the end of the month, at least.
yeah, and that will kind of wrap up the whole Invasion storyline. It's the aftermath of that. And the cover of that of 181 shows Dragon floating in space with a bunch of rock debris behind him. So it's like, you wonder what happened with his
little spat with his son.
Yeah, Krull. So I can't wait to talk about that one. It's been a while since we've had a new Dragon issue in our hands.
Yep.
So it should be interesting and fun. It's always good to chat Savage Dragon with you, Jim.
Yep, it's always good to talk to you,
Or
Craig.
Supreme. But yeah.
Supreme's just as good. Good substitute.
Right. Yep. Gotta agree. Cool. So that's that.
The Savage FINcast is a member of the Image Addiction Podcast Network. Find them at imageaddiction.net. The Savage FINcast is generously hosted by guttertrash.net. If you have any questions or comments for the Savage FINcast, email us at savagefincast@gmail.com.